When I'm trying to explain you to somebody, I call you my wild card. I don't even know where to begin with you.
Okay, I pictured the Gold Street in heaven. It has an Irish pub, and the triplets are sitting at a table.
When you say triplets, you're actually talking about the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Right? This is my picture, and I can sit at the table and go, I'm in trouble. I've forgotten me. My request was so small, but I thought it was huge.
Wow.
So we got 5 decades of broken-hearted anger.
Oof.
Where were you when? Why did you let this? What about the brothers? You line yourself with fathers, and fathers suck. You need to stay out of my face. If I speak your name, it'll be because I'm pissed off.
Hey, everybody, this is Rita Springer. Welcome to the Rita Springer podcast. And once again, worship is my weapon. I say this a lot, but I know a lot of incredible people, and I get really excited when the people that I know on the show, I have history with, some relationship with, and I get so excited for you to meet them because their stories are incredible. For me, it's all about the story. It's all about the history of somebody, how somebody gets from where they were to where God's taking them. And this today, folks, today's a treat. Today's a treat. Today on the show, I have Lisa Jennett on. And for many of you, she may be unfamiliar. There may be some of you out there that know her or you've come across her. The first thing I will say is before this podcast ends, you need to go to Amazon.com and you need to get her book called When I Last Saw Me. It's by Sammi Bass, but she'll explain the whole thing. This is, to me, Lisa, this is an epic poetic novel. And I am so thankful that you flew in this morning. We've been talking about this for a while. Yeah. I've been wanting you to come on the show. You actually really are one of my most favorite people in the world. When I'm trying to explain you to somebody, I call you my wild card. Okay. You know, like in a deck of cards, there's like a joker or the wild card. And you are like this glorious wild card to me. I've never met anybody like you. I will probably never in my life meet anybody like you. The way that you think, the way that you communicate, the way that you even talk to people and share your journey with people, and even your gospel with people, is just probably one of the most creative, poetic people I've ever met in my life. You kind of do when you read a book like this. If you don't have poetry in you, or you don't understand the language of poetry, or how or love the story, like good storytelling, you'll need a decoder. But because I understood it, to me, it was just like, it was beautiful. In fact, this particular copy was the copy, I'm going to say it was maybe July 2018 that I met you. It was July 4th. Dallas, Texas.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the backyard of a mutual friend.
Yeah, in the pool.
By the pool. And you had showed up to give her a landscape estimate.
Right, yeah.
Because you own a landscape company in Dallas, Texas area. And I don't know why we started talking. She introduced us. You had told me that maybe Cassie told me you wrote a book. And this was Cassie's original copy.
So I owe Cassie a copy.
Yes. And then I gave this copy to Kate, who has it. Christmas has it. Oh, and it's all marked up. In fact, I was like, where? Because I don't have another copy, because Kate took my copy. And Kate just moved out here from LA, so the copy's back. And I was asking Kate for it the other day, and she goes, it's just all completely, because Kate's been trying to write a screenplay for this.
Right.
But
it's so fun.
So this little book has had its own little journey. But I have wanted to get you here on the show to somehow try to just tell live on a podcast your story and your journey, because it really is like, it's almost like it's miraculous that you're still alive. Mm-hmm. It really is miraculous. It's miraculous just with what you battle physically, that you're still alive. And so there's a reason why God has you sharing your story. You're one of the most powerful storytellers I've ever been around. I tell your story all the time. Like when I'm mentoring a lot, people will talk about how to find God with it outside of this religious way. And I'm always like, I have this friend, and I will describe this story, but I don't even know where to begin with you, because how do you begin when like you start telling your story? Do you have do you have a little platform that you start off your story from, and how you even found spirituality and found like your version of how you met the Lord?
Where would I start? I'd probably start where most of, the Bible Belt would start. My mother made us go to church when we were kids. It really bothered my father. So by the time we got home from church, he was always in a really bad mood. And he had degrees of bad mood, like 100 million degrees and 100 million degrees plus one.
Yeah.
So by the time we got home on a Sunday, life was just truly awful. My father was super physically abusive, very emotionally abusive, really kicked around the name of God. And so it was super conflict, because I was the only girl. I have all brothers.
Yeah.
And so as a girl, I really wanted my father to like me.
Yeah.
And so I got in conflict probably pretty early about, okay, if I go to church with my mother, then my father hates me. Then when I was about 10, Raymond, my father, we moved to another town. We moved a lot as kids, which isn't unusual. But
Was that because of his job? Why did you move a lot?
It was his job. He would probably get into trouble on his jobs and took a different job.
Got it.
We didn't usually move with the same company. We moved to take a different job. And so we moved to the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. I lived all my life in West Texas,
Okay.
Lubbock, Levelland. And then we moved all the way down to the border of Mexico. And that was fun because obviously all of us are very pale, very blue-eyed, blonde hair.
Yeah,
and we were major, big time the minority. I loved it because when I was little, if you asked me what I want to be when I grow up, I would tell you I want to be a Mexican. So it was the best day of my life when we moved to the valley, because all I ever wanted was black hair, brown eyes, gorgeous skin. So I was like, my people.
Yeah.
But when we were down there, Raymond decided to become a believer, or I believed that's what he said. So he got baptized. And
Baptist? Like, are we talking
it was a
denominational?
Baptist church.
Okay.
It was a Baptist church. So he got baptized. So I was like, okay, he'll like me if I get baptized.
Mm-hmm.
So I got baptized. I was 10. Well, we got home from church and he beat me blue blazes for stealing the show.
Wow.
And so I was like, okay, baptism is bad and Baptist is bad and the Bible is probably bad. And this whole thing sort of sucks with a jumbo straw.
Yeah.
But I was always just kind of prone to be a good kid. People probably described me as rebellious because I just didn't think the same as some. But I would have never described myself as rebellious. Did the grades, 8 years old. I got my first job.
Pretty smart kid.
I was very dutiful. And so at 16, my older two brothers had already moved out and the abuse had never slowed down for 1 minute. He was what you might term a rageaholic. I don't know that there is such a term, but he would just binge for days on end. And just if you came by, if you were breathing, if you coughed, you were not allowed to be sick at any time. Then he would just get up and just beat you up for it. And so it was always a very volatile sort of household. I paid a lot of attention, probably all of my days. And so I could sense when it was coming. I would stay up.
You'd almost have to.
Somebody had to do it. And so I would stay up. My mother learned early on that her best form of survival was when he started, she'd go in her room and close the door. And so it was kind of up to us to fend for ourselves. And we all figured out a way to do that. And my way was to try to keep him, what you need ice cream, what you need cornflakes in your ice cream, what you need me to make macaroni and cheese. Yes, it is 3:30. I will make macaroni and cheese. So I really pandered wrongly out of survival to the whole thing. But at 16, we're down to 2 kids and just as much abuse. So it's only being divided over two people.
Because one of the brothers is out of the house now.
Two are already gone. Two are already gotten old enough to move
And they
out.
left.
They're gone the second they could get gone. And so at 16, I thought, well, if this Jesus thing is a real thing and I'm going to get dead, I probably would prefer heaven to go into what they're
And at that point, at 16, is he still like going to church? Wasn't he like, was he a deacon?
No, he's a deacon. He's a deacon in the church at this point.
But then beating you guys to a pulp.
Yeah, and just saying things that you just don't
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
You know? And it was very creative in his abuse. I mean, he probably, there's authors that write real creative horror stories that he could have kicked their ass on.
Wow,
This is creativity.
Yeah.
And so the stuff he would come up with, you're just like, I can't believe this. So at 16, I was like, okay, I bargained with heaven. I said, I will, in fact, get baptized if you promise me that when I get dead, I never have to meet God.
Yikes.
I just didn't like him. This is a very bad plan. Why would you line yourself with fathers?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was my deal.
Yeah.
That was my bargain. And that was it. And people would say, are you a Christian? And in that culture, you kind of had to say yes, or somebody give you the Roman road to whatever. And
we're talking Texas.
It's Texas, right? And so and by now we're not in the valley anymore. And so I went to college, and in college, I met a kilt-wearing, bagpipe-playing, Scotch whiskey drinking.
Wait, where did you go to college?
University of Texas in Arlington. So I stayed home. To go to college. I had a scholarship to go away, but my mother said, if you leave, he'll kill me. And so I stayed home to go to college and had a great job and a lot of independence, because I was making really good money. And so when I got married, I moved to Scotland. I thought, 6,000 miles, that ought to be a decent distance.
So you meet this guy in college. Did you finish college, or did you just...
I still like 17 hours. I like 17 hours to have
and you hightail it off to Scotland?
I moved to Scotland. He's 12 years my senior, and I'm like, sounds great. So moved to Scotland and lived there for all of 7 years, and then kind of back and forth over the next 10 years. And so I got there, unemployment was super high, and so I accidentally started an export business. And somebody heard about it, and literally a guy meets me at the airport, this little guy from the Highlands, and he says, I hear you're doing exports, and Scottish smoked salmon is the most famous salmon in all the world. You need to take this to America. I was like, sure. So I get on the plane with this piece of dead fish, and I land in Dallas, and I go over to a hotel in Dallas. And really, I'm 22 years old. I chap on the back door, and I'm like, hey, I've got some Scottish smoked salmon. Can I talk to the chef? And for whatever reason, they let me in the kitchen, and the chef just loves this Scottish smoked salmon. And he says, I want my friend to try it. So he says, hey, Wolfgang. It's Wolfgang Puck. So he brings him over. And so next minute, I'm selling just uber amounts of smoked salmon. And now...
Are we talking like... dehydrated salmon? Or are you actually bringing it over on ice?
No, it's smoked, so you have to keep it cool.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the cod that you get out of Norway. This was fresh fish, smoked, vacuum packed, and then you kept it cool to keep it fresh, right?
Good grief.
And so these guys are all like, can you get this fish? And I'm like, yeah. My answer to everything was, sure, yeah, I can do that. I don't know what half these fish are. I don't even eat fish. And so... I would come back to Scotland and say, okay, where do I find Dover sole? Where do I find Greenland turbot? Where do I find langostinos? And so the airline was like, yeah, we can ship overnight, but you're going to have an air freight container that's more watertight. So I found these guys in Switzerland that built the air freight container. And then I needed a better box. So I found a guy I said, this is the box I want to make, and now, by now I'm a ripe old 23. And so these guys are building the boxes, and so I ended up buying some factories, and I have like 250 employees. I'm in the dead fish business, and a guy comes along and he says, well, I'm a godmother to 2 Nigerian kids in Glasgow. And one of them is an attorney, and he's like, well, the Nigerians love mackerel. If you can get mackerel, to sell to Nigeria. We'll start a company there. So now I have a company in Nigeria. I have a boat meeting the Russians at sea. We're loading frozen mackerel, sending it to Nigeria. So one of the Nigerians moves to Baghdad, and he calls me and he says, can you make your own label whiskey? Sure, I can do that. And so I go find a distillery, and I have my own label whiskey, and I'm shipping 100,000 cases at a time to Baghdad.
And your husband's doing this business with you, or you?
Yes and no. He was not entirely motivated except by all the perks. He loved the perks. And so I'm working hard. His dad is working with me. We've got a lot of employees, but we're literally there hands-on, make sure all these containers are packed. Now, the whiskey, no, that was all done at sea. The mackerel we bought from the Russians at sea. We didn't have to do a whole lot with that. And so now I have all this business running crazy.
And you don't have to go home. You're not going home to Texas. You don't have to see your dad. You don't have to see your mom.
I'm going to Texas a lot, but I'm not seeing them. And so I went about probably 2 or 3 decades without seeing them. Still saw my brothers.
Yeah.
Each time I went home, checked on the brothers. And so in there, we were told we couldn't have children. All of a sudden, I'm pregnant with twins. And it was matching girls, identical twin girls.
Yeah.
They died a few weeks after birth, and McLean and McKenzie. So I was stuck on the Mac names. J Mac, my son, who's now 36, 37, 35. His name has got a Mac in it. So I loved the Mac names. And then in the late 80s, all the savings and loans in this country went belly up. So a lot of my customers went belly up.
Got it.
And so overnight, I'm like broke again. But I'm not even 30 yet. And so I'm like, well, dude, that was fun. But my husband was panicking. He's 40. He's 41. He's like, I'm like, no, we'll just invent something else. Something else will come up. Well, at that point, I came back to Texas for a while. We were doing business with a prince in Bahrain, and so he went there to try to work some deals with him. And eventually, I got back to London. I moved to Scotland came back to Scotland a couple of times, then eventually we both moved to London. Our marriage was really on the rocks. J-Mac is now 5, and it was like, okay, London's neutral, right? So we moved to London, and I was not there long, maybe 6-8 months, and realized there's nothing. You don't have a deal. There's no job. There's no deal.
Yeah.
And then we got evicted. Had this beautiful flat across from Kensington Palace. We get evicted. He disappears. So J-Mac, we got evicted without notice, so our passports are inside that flat. And so J-Mac and I are on the streets, right? And so we're like, well, okay. So we found this, it was London in January is cold. January and February we weren't homeless for an extended period of time. I would say 6-7 weeks. And then, but there was a church down on Trafalgar Square, St. Martin in the Field. Do you know it?
No.
It's a fabulous church. And the symphony rehearses there. So they heat that church. And so we would hang out there in the daytime. And if you were really good at it, you could figure out how to stay all night. Now the heat went off, so it got cold. But J-Mac, when I've asked him.
And he's how old? 6?
5. He's 5. And so I'm like.
And you're a single mom, homeless in London.
Yeah. But we figured it out. What you do is you like at Victoria Station, they have several restaurants. So you just evaluate who you would eat after. And you go get their food before they can get it in the trash.
Oh, Lisa.
And so, no, it was J-Mac just thinks it's an adventure. Even now, I'm like, do you not remember? He's like, I remember a great adventure.
Wow.
Like, let's just stick with that. We're going to go with that story.
Oh my gosh. I can't even imagine as a single mom.
So eventually, when I got the passports back, I went to Grosvenor House and explained the situation. They said, no, they can't keep your passport, but they can keep his because he's British. So I went back to the guy. I said, I don't want anything, just passports. So he went in and he got our passports, and a friend wired me money. We went back to Texas, and
what do you do when you go back to Texas and you have nothing?
There. I had a house. I did have a house. It was being foreclosed on because those payments hadn't been made either. But I worked a deal with them, and I started mowing lawns in the daytime. I was waiting tables at night. My brother owns a jewelry store, so if it was raining, I was a bench jeweler, which just meant I crafted the metal part of, if you invented a ring, you drew a ring on a napkin, then I carved a wax and made a ring. And so
you're insane.
I know,
can't.
it was crazy. It's a crazy time. So that's kind of how it went for 2 years. And then people would started kind of going, well, can you plant me 3 yopons here? Yes. And then I'd go to the nursery. What's a yopon?
Yeah, because you knew nothing.
I knew nothing about landscape. Nothing. No. And so my answer was always just yes. Yeah, of course. And I said it with such confidence they actually believed me, which was so cute. And then so we get going again, and business actually kind of takes off. And now we have, 50 or 60 employees and selling the company for a decent amount.
That's insane.
Of money. And I stayed single for about 10 or 11 years, maybe 12. And then J-Mac was in high school, and I was like, okay, he's going to go off to college, and it'd probably be okay to think about dating someone. So I got it when Match.com started their site. I got on Match.com. Met a lot of people. I was on there about a year and a half. I loved it. I had a great time. Because if you're my friend and you fix me up on a date, then I feel obligated to stay to the end because you're going to ask me how it went. On that site, if I fixed me up on a date and I got there and it was going terrible, I'd just be like, here's $20 for your martini. I'm gonna go watch MASH reruns because this is terrible, right? And so,
how many dates did you have like that? Were you just like,
24, easy 24. But then this guy reaches out, and so I go on, and it was we don't get snow or stuff, but all of a sudden a freak ice storm rolls in, and I'm driving a red F-250 with a 6-inch lift and all-wheel drive, and you don't have phone numbers. You're just going through this site. And so ice storm comes in. I'm like, well, I'll go see if he shows up. Well, he shows up. And so I had put in my profile that I liked peanut M&Ms. He shows up with a bag of peanut M&Ms.
Wow.
I was like, all right. He read all the words.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we went on a second date a few days later to a hamburger joint. And J-Mac actually showed up on that one. Comes in all 140 pounds of him with his cowboy hat on and his starched jeans, and flips a chair around backward at the end of the booth and starts interviewing this guy. And I watched him, and he took it pretty well. I was like, okay, that's a good thing. We got peanut M&Ms, and he's not mean to my boys. So he says, do you want to go out Friday? This was Tuesday. Do you want to go out Friday? I said, yes, but I'm taking that son that you just met and some of his friends to France for about 8 or 9 days. So you'd have to go with us. Do you want to go?
Insanity.
And so, because in my mind, there were girls going. And in my mind, I've got, okay, I'm staying with the girls. No one's staying with these rogue boys.
Right.
Boom, you're it.
You're it. You're the chaperone.
So he's like, I don't have a current passport. So now I'm like, you're off the list. Anybody doesn't keep their passport current, we're not dating.
Done.
And so
Dunskies.
I get home. Now I'm going to go look for somebody new, right? So I open back up the little Match.com thing. And there's a message from him that says, are y'all on flight 52 going out? What's your flight coming back and what day? So I message back, you don't even have a passport. He says, no, I found an expediter. I'll have it Friday morning. If the offer's serious, I'll go. I'm like, an engineer, wasn't mean to my son.
Bag of peanut M&Ms.
Bag of peanut M&Ms and spontaneous. Okay, deal. These are the flights. And so that was a test for him to go with, all these 16-year-olds to Paris.
For 9 days.
We had a great time. He did well. It wasn't like we were on a date. I just kind of got to observe him as a human and vice versa. So it was really great. Well, we dated. We got married a year later.
Yeah.
But neither one of us are believer people. He was a recovering Roman Catholic. I'm a recovering Southern Baptist, It just didn't matter to us.
And all of this time, like from the time that you graduate or the time that you leave college, you marry this Scottish guy, you do all this business and exporting in Scotland, you're not communicating in any way with God.
No, they put me in charge of the Sunday school at the Church of Scotland. The guy I married was an elder at that church.
Okay.
But he was not a nice man either. So now we're just digging the hole deeper.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they put me in charge of the Sunday school, which meant I didn't have to go to church. I had the kids. Now, which was great because it was a parish church. So they were all neighborhood kids and they just came in rough. I loved those kids. And if it was raining, I got more kids because someplace warm. And I would always take food, and we're just going to hang out. And I'm a Texan, so I'm, a mystery to them. And we just had a great time. Sometimes one of them would say, what about this verse? And we'd read a verse. But then you add, you can't have children. And then I get 2 children and they both die. I mean, this coffin with heaven has so many nails in it.
Yeah. You're like, I'm done.
I'm like, bring on the chains. I'm going to chain around this coffin that I've nailed shut. But it's interesting to me that you're still teaching Sunday school. Like you're still somehow around the building. I was at the building, but I wasn't actually. They gave me no curriculum. They gave me no clues. It was basically take care of the kids.
So it's not like you were like, Jonah and the whale, let's do a little story time from the Bible.
No. But that would have been a good one because that one's so ridiculous, right? That one's such a ridiculously fabulous miracle. You'd be like, okay, let's try this on. Let's poke holes in this.
Was anything a pull for you back then where you look back on it now where you're like, oh, he kept me.
My gosh, that's the best part, isn't it? Once I did fall in love with the triplets, the inventory on my life.
Yeah.
I don't like you, but he could not help himself with regard to me.
Yeah.
It's just crazy about me left, right, and center.
Yeah.
The times I should have just been 86 from the planet Earth and I wasn't, and there's no explanation.
Yeah.
Except the Lord your dad.
Yeah.
Who I was just like, you need to stay out of my face. If I speak your name, it'll be because I'm pissed off.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've said that 1,000 times, the way he was just like, with no particularly good reason.
Yeah.
He can't not be that.
Yeah.
He can't not be in love with me.
Yeah. That knowing your story, the back end of your story and the rights that you had coming to the table in anger, like the validation of all the reasons why you wanted nothing to do with God.
Yeah.
Or like, it's like, I don't know anybody that would have argued with you. But then the way that you actually find him is so miraculously what he would do to find somebody who had your backstory. And I think that's what makes God so personalizing God. It's that he isn't this structured, artificial, thing that sometimes religion makes him out to be. He actually is person to person. And I think that's why your story just cracks me up, which part of the decoder for you, which is, I'll probably have to slip in here for people that don't have it, is when you say triplets, you're actually talking about the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Because when he introduced all of himself to you, did he call them the triplets?
He did. I said, I don't know. After we had our encounter, we got a few things sorted out. I was like, okay, well, it's still just too complicated. There's like 3 of you. That's just weird.
Yeah.
And he's like, do this. My girls were identical. They were matching twins. Yeah. He said, just consider us matching triplets.
What a great way to say that.
Because your twins had very different personalities. And they would have done very different things.
Yeah.
And that's us.
Wow.
And so it stuck. That just made total sense to me. I was like, got it. I mean, in a nanosecond, I was like, got it. But that's what you just described.
Right.
That's just what he does. He's like, okay, this is fluent Lisa.
Yeah.
And he speaks fluent me all the time.
Yeah.
He speaks fluent Zippo all the time.
Yeah.
And so, and he can do all of that at once.
Yeah, that's pretty wild. Yeah. Okay. I got to take you back to, because when you started writing this book, what made you start writing this book? Was it the fact that because you start the book running away
Yes.
Like you have this kind of like, you marry Tank and then was it 50? Were you 50?
52.
52. And you packed up everything.
I didn't pack up very well at all, actually.
Brown paper bag.
That bag on the cover is actually Mr. Brown. That was what I called that bag. So I am in a rush. Everything, nothing giant. Tank and I were not at odds. I didn't have financial issues.
He's a good man. He's still a good man. He's the best man in the world.
Best. He's the best. And if you guys want to make a pray for him, putting up with me all the time, that'd be great. But I just came to the end of myself. And so I was just like, got to get out. And I go upstairs and I find Mr. Brown and I put panties in and I get a toothbrush.
But what's bringing that on? Like are you agitated about something? How long have you been married now to Tank?
Oh, at
this point?
Probably 10 years.
You've been married to Tank for 10 years. You're not going to church.
No.
You're not living any kind of a life that you would ever say, because God's got, there's chains around the coffin of the church and it's sinking to the bottom of the sea.
Bye-bye.
So what's happening around you that makes you start panicking, that you grab that brown duffel bag and you start packing stuff in it and you hightail it to find?
Yeah, I think part of it is, and I know you can relate to this.
It's a midlife crisis in a sense.
In a sense. So part of it is just feeling completely unknown. Tank loves me like crazy. But there were still things I would do that he'd just be like, I just don't get it. And I'd be like, how hard what do you mean? I didn't even know how to explain myself. And then,
like what? Like, well, what's an example of something that would make you understandable?
Pretty much. And even to this day, there'll be... I will be laughing like crazy about something and nobody else in the room is laughing. I just don't see things
the same
correctly.
way.
And so and after a while, people begin to get tired of it. And then I can see their exhaustion and exasperation. But J-Mac was also really fed up with me. He was in a bad place in his life. And so all of that was coming back down. Everything I had done wrong as a mom
was coming on
me. And so
is it safe to say that in this, with the way that you write the story, that it's not just a midlife crisis, but it's almost like you can't keep stuffing stuff in closets.
Absolutely.
Because the door's opening and everything from your past is now falling out.
Yeah. And there's no mom to go to. Got zero relationship with my
Then you're not going to your dad.
I'm not going to Raymond. And then, I do have 3 brothers, but my role was never that in our family.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I'm going to go to them and say, help me. I'm dying in a heap here. And so as a matter of, if I can get far enough away again, I will take care of me. And when I get me back to square one, then I'll come back.
Lisa.
I'll come back. Just going to white knuckle everything. I've got the fortitude. What I always know is
you got you.
Yeah,
you got you to.
I got me.
You got you. You can depend on you.
I can depend on me. And I have I'd managed to do that for 5 decades.
Yeah.
Right? So
you pack that brown
very
duffel
poorly
bag.
pack that bag and I take off. And Tank sees me leaving and he's like, where are you going? Because he sees the bag. And I'm like, I don't know. And I have my giant journal. So for years I've written in this journal. It was an old 1910 maybe customs and excise ledger. It's about this big. It's about this big.
Of course you do.
So I've got this journal with me. And now he's like, she's not coming back. Because that's her lifeline.
He knows. Yeah.
And he says, are you coming back? So, I'm 5'0". So I'm looking him square in the chest because I'm not going to raise my chin. And I said, I will tell you that I will come back. As the best I could do.
Wow.
Zero conviction.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. So he put my bag and my journal in the back seat of my Jeep.
He puts it in the back seat.
I drive to the very end of the driveway. And I don't even know if I'm going to go left or right.
Whoa.
And so I was like, well, I can't go south. I'll run out of Texas. I didn't bring a passport.
Okay.
If I go right, it's going to put me in East Texas, a lot of trees, can't deal with the claustrophobia.
Okay.
It's already November. I'm not going north. I don't do cold. So I left west. And I turned left, which was west. And I started driving, and I started taking every exit, and then I started taking every back road. And I would stop at stuff, and I would journal, and I'd get mad, and I would kick stuff, and I'd cry, and then I'd get back in the Jeep, and I'd drive some more. And then I did stop at one point and buy a camera. So
Like a disposable camera?
No, it was a little digital.
Okay.
I actually did text Tank. I called him probably and said, hey, need a camera. Don't want to spend a lot of money. What do I buy? He told me what to buy. I went to Best Buy and bought a digital camera. And so...
and you just start taking pictures along the way.
Along the way. And so I ended up eventually...
This is such a movie. Like, if this doesn't turn into a movie...
I ended up at... I realized, oh my gosh, I'm really close to Lubbock and Levelland, where I spent my first 10 years, right? Oof. Do I go? And then I was like, I go. Oof. And all I could remember about the house, there were 2 houses that we lived in Lubbock. I couldn't remember the first one at all, but the second one I knew. We had a sidewalk down the middle going up to the front door. There was a lead walk, and there was a 1-car garage.
Yeah.
And it was on 49th Street. But 49th Street in Lubbock only has letters and numbers. So it's a really long street. And I drove down the road. And then that particular street breaks up and has shopping in the middle and then picks back up. And then I remember there was an elementary school that we used to go take my brother to. And so I track it down to finally find the house. And I'm 100% certain this is the house. And I sit in the Jeep. It's raining, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm looking at this house, and
this house that
I just had such
horrible
memories
of.
Yeah. And I stayed there for, I don't know why no one called the police or arrested me. I was there for hours, and I just replayed them all. I got out at one point and went to that lead walk because a terrible thing had happened in the middle of that lead walk, and I stood there. And I probably weighed upwards of 100,000 pounds. Yeah, just all I could do to get back in the Jeep. Yeah. And then I was like, okay. And now I have to leave this town. And so I went to Levelland, which was the next town we lived in. And I got a hotel. And the next day I went to the church that my mother had made us go to. It's Thanksgiving week, and so everything's shut.
Yeah.
But I managed to get into the church. I managed to get into my elementary school, which was closed. I went to the classrooms. We just went to all the places.
And are you, in the sense of that, are you feeling like there's an unraveling or that there's a stitching back together?
Well, I don't know at that point. All I know is I didn't make this shit up.
Yeah.
This was real stuff. I didn't make anything up because you get removed from it for a while. And you're like, oh, maybe I exaggerated.
Yeah.
Maybe, it was the way an 8-year-old remembered, a 5-year-old remembered. And I got there and I was like, no, I've actually tempered it to survive.
Wow.
Because to be near it just made it multidimensional again.
Wow.
There was we had a country club near our house, and I couldn't swim. And so Raymond was determined for me to learn to swim. And so I was supposed to jump off the diving board and swim over to the little steps up. And so I wasn't doing well, and he held me down. He just held me under. There. And then I was just like, no more water ever again the rest of my life. Right. I took the strangest vows.
Yeah.
Some of those I really had to work hard to break as I realized, I think it was a real life oath right there. And so one of the things I did was I went to that country club.
Oof.
And the pool was empty for the winter. So I walked into the pool all the way down to that spot, and it was the same pool. I couldn't believe it was the same pool. Now that pool's been ripped out and new one's been put in.
Interesting.
But that pool, and it had that winter water in it, and the lawn chair was down in it. It was really murky and smelly. It was exactly what it should have been.
Yeah.
Right? Because if it had been fresh and clean, it would have been very startling.
Yeah.
Right? And so I just did that for several days, and then just kept writing everything in that journal. And then it's like, okay, I think I'm ready to. I'm ready to go home. And it struck, you know that scene in the Chris Tiny Tim, what's the Tiny Christmas Carol?
Yeah.
Where he's like, all of a sudden he wakes up and he's like, oh my gosh, it's Christmas. And he's shouting out the window. That morning when I woke up in the hotel, I was like, oh my gosh, did I miss Thanksgiving? You know, because I'd just been in this time
tunnel,
warp, right? You know? And so I hadn't. And so I started kind of heading home, and then I had to stop again on the way home and take inventory again 2 more times before I actually, you know, got back to
with other places.
Yeah. And
but it wasn't an intentional thing. You just found yourself driving there.
Yeah.
Which is just so like stunning to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't make this up.
No,
but this, when I go back, this was absolutely the Lord real dad going, over here.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
You want to go. You want to go west.
So.
Let me tell you why you want to go west. Because you don't like trees. They make you claustrophobic.
Yeah.
You don't do cold.
Yeah.
Let's go west. Driving west. You know, which if you know West Texas, it's not exactly a resort to drive to. You know, you either love that or you hate it. And I happen to love it. And so and then the people I met. You know, conversations I had like with like a waiter and
in those towns and in those locations.
You know, and I'm over here thinking, you know, my life is just terrible. And this waitress at one cafe was like, today I'm going to drive to La Mesa and pick up my mom. She's getting out of jail and she's going to come to my house for 4 days. And my brother gets out of jail next Sunday and next Saturday, you know, we're going to go together to get him. And I'm going, wow, my life is so great, you know. And so, but everywhere I went, this is the fascinating part to me. Everywhere I went, it raised an eyebrow because it's Thanksgiving week. I'm a woman in my 50s by myself. So the question was, no matter what town I was in, you in town to see family?
Nope.
Why are you in town? I ran away from home. Every single person.
You would say that? You actually said, I ran
every
away
single
from
person
home.
went like this. They went, I've always wanted to do that. 100%. That was the response.
Wow.
I've always wanted to do that. It's not just me. I mean, my story is what it is, but it's not unique.
Yeah.
There's like bazillions of me floating around.
Lisa.
Saying I want to run away from home.
Yeah.
And we're all built with fortitude. We know we could run away from home. We know we can white knuckle our way through anything.
Yeah.
And we don't embark for any number of reasons. You know.
And it's what's actually kind of supernatural about it, maybe revelatory about it for me listening to you, is that when you think about that, and I even think about, man, I had some tragedies in my past, but you can't compare them. But the running away from home is almost, when you get to that place, you can finally find yourself.
Exactly.
And that's what's so profound about your story is that the way you even, because you when you title your book, When I Last Saw Me, is that why you titled your book that? Because it was like a journey back to history to find actually who you even were.
Yeah. I had often wondered, was I ever as good as I've made myself up in my mind? Was I as diligent? Was I a cooperative kid in the family? By the time I finished my trip to Levelland, I was like, you know what? I was probably somebody's really delightful little girl.
Yeah. Wow.
Probably. I stopped at probably, you know, because I'm always full of beans. I've always been full of beans. Everything is an adventure.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
My daughter-in-law called me an adventure assaulter the other day. She says, you just grab people and make them go on an adventure and they don't even want to go. And then when they're finished, they're like, whoa.
Yeah, totally.
Just like, and so everything to me is going to be an adventure. And so as a little kid, I can imagine that would have been dead fun to have in the house. You know, somebody was like, we can do it, guys.
Yeah, yeah.
So that part was affirming, but I knew that I was still mad.
Oh, yeah.
But on this trip, I became acutely aware that this God guy was in the Jeep with me.
Wow.
I had no doubt he was in the back seat.
But you didn't talk to him.
No.
You didn't acknowledge
and
that he was there.
And he didn't talk to me.
say anything to you.
He just rode along. You know, he's just riding along in the back like,
oh, man.
you know, I thought, you know, if he smoked, this would be a good time to have a smoke. Because we're not talking, you know. So at one point, I realized that I had made incredible friends with disappointment.
Oof.
And she was actually riding shotgun.
Wow.
And so at one of the very last stops that I made, I walked around for a while and I got back and he opened the door for her on the passenger side and ushered her out of the car.
Oof.
And he walked her to a bench. It was so real.
Wow.
And kissed her. And then he got back in the front seat.
And
Still
you
didn't
left her
talk.
on the bench.
Still didn't talk. We didn't talk. Drove all the way home.
Wow.
I know. And I was like,
what do you say? Like, yeah, what are you going to say to
What are you
him?
going to say? Cheeseburger? You want a cheeseburger? So do you take your Coke or Diet Coke? 'Cause asking for a friend.
Coke Zero.
Yeah, Coke Zero.
So you get all the way home. You can sense that God's now in the front seat. But it's still a while before.
Yeah, he doesn't come in the house. I don't invite him. He may have, but I didn't invite him in. As far as I knew, he just like spontaneously combusted, you know, just casually evaporated. He's gone. The adventure's over. I go back to work, get everything done for Thanksgiving and see my kids. And
Did you feel a weight, a little bit of a weight off your shoulders?
I felt like something was coming. You know that anticipatory feeling that you get?
Yeah.
I felt like, okay, something's coming. For some reason, I've been primed.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if it was a big business change. I didn't know if, you know, suddenly my son was going to like me. I didn't know if, you know, I was going to win the lottery. I didn't know it was coming.
Something in the atmosphere, something around
you know
in
how
the
you can
spirit.
just kind of smell that sound, you know? And so I was home about a week. Now, I'm business savvy. In the Metroplex, church people give business to church people.
Yeah.
So I would kind of make the rounds. I would go to different customers' churches once in a while, just so they knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a church lady. You
Yeah.
know? Well, there was one guy in particular that was on to me and had been for 3 years. And I didn't know this. In fact, I didn't know this for a long time. And he had like a group of people making a pray for me. And he'd been on this event that every once in a while he'd bring up, his wife would bring up, say, we went on this thing and we really think you just love it. And I'd be like, yeah, one day I'm going to go to your church lady thing. And in my mind, I'm going, never. You know,
And wait, you knew him from just...
He was a customer. He's a
Right.
customer.
I thought, I think my recollection of that part of the story was that he, like you mowed some of his properties, right?
A lot of them. Yeah, he was probably my biggest customer, spending a lot of money with me. So he, you know, we made extra effort to be sure that he
got,
Did you see me? I was at your church today. That means I'm a church lady. Got it? Keep giving me business.
Got it. So you are working it.
Yes, capitalist to the core, right? And so...
wow. And so he's inviting you to go to this
he keeps saying,
retreat.
Yeah, you ought to go to this thing, you know? And so I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to Camp Jesus Jail for Church Ladies, also known as a retreat. You know, I was just being, in my mind, I was super cynical about it. But to his face, I was like, yeah.
But you're like H to the
well,
no.
I get back from my runaway gig and he's bought my ticket for the January one.
Oh, whoa.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh.
So he not only has people praying for you.
Now he's got 3 years later, he's getting pretty proactive about it, right? He and his wife have made this determination
they're going to get you, and they're going to get you into that Jesus camp.
I kept thinking, yeah.
I love that you called it a Jesus camp, though.
And so I'm like, nah, it's January. I'll figure out a way to get out of this, right? Well, day came, and at that time you boarded a bus and you drove.
You drove
about 5 or 6 hours
with a bunch of other people.
All the other church ladies on board, yay! And so I'm getting on that bus and I'm looking right at this man, and he spends millions of dollars with me, right? I'm looking right at him. I said, I hate you. I'm dropping the F-bomb.
Oh,
I'm furious. And so his wife, who's just a sweetheart, is like, Brian, do you think she means it? And he's killing himself laughing. He goes, oh yeah, she means it. And so he's just like, so I go to this Camp Jesus thing.
And he sees you off on the bus.
Yes, he does. I guess he's going to make sure they actually close the door, right? So I do. And of course, I'm an all-inner.
Yeah.
You give me something, I'm going to be all in. Okay, I'm on the bus. We're going to be all in. For me, it was an opportunity to prove, again, that this is a no-go. Those nails aren't budging, right? So I'll go do all your steps.
But I'm not.
Right?
God's
Challenge,
not,
right? So I go through all the steps.
And that's what is it, 5 days?
5.5 days. And on day 2, they have starvation day. Some people call it fasting. So you're on this big ranch, and you're kind of like given a backpack with 2 Gatorades, 2 waters, and a manual. And it's not a survival manual; it's a Jesus manual, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm trudging around and find a spot. I did climb over a fence, but it didn't dawn on me that meant I was leaving the property. But found the place I wanted to be.
And what's the task? You're supposed to take this
manual. You spend all day
out with yourself.
Yeah. Well, in theory, with the triplets,
with
everybody
Father,
else,
Son, and Holy Ghost,
right?
Out there talking to Jesus with your manual.
With your manual, and they give you these little things you're supposed to do all day. When you finish this exercise, do this.
Do this.
First one was salvation.
Oof. What are you doing?
Well, I'm reading it going, I got mad because no one had ever explained it this way.
Interesting.
So I'm like, wait, what? No one has ever said this. So now I'm just madder, right? So I just get a little gas on the fire.
Because it's language you've never heard.
Right. All I'd heard is religion language. All I'd heard is church lady language. But this was not written like that. I mean, they blended Beauty and the Beast. I mean, it's just like, it was all word picture.
Oh,
well, I live in word picture world.
There you go.
Right. So I'm like, I'm still reticent. And I'm like, absolutely not. No.
Got it.
No. And so now that I'm fired up, I just tear into it. Nobody can hear me. I'm miles from anybody. And so I'm just shouting at the thin air.
And is this the first time you've unleashed on the Lord?
So we got 5 decades.
Oof, Lisa.
Of broken-hearted anger.
Oof. Yeah.
And I'm just calling him every name that I've ever thought of, and some that just appeared that morning. Just names. Just, where were you when? Why did you let this? What about the brothers? You line yourself with fathers, and fathers suck. And what was your plan? This is a terrible plan. And your boy Jesus is okay, but how come he never calls you on the carpet? How come he never makes you accountable? How come he never tells you what's going on down here? So I'm mad at all of you. And so I've gone on for a while. I mean, I'm hoarse. I'm crying. I've laid on the dirt. I'm muddy from my own tears.
Yeah.
And he shows up. Like physically shows up.
He physically shows up. Yeah, when you were telling me this, I had to stop you because I was like, wait, what? Like an actual person? And I loved your response to me because you were like, how was I to know that's not what he does with everybody? It's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
If you have no reference.
Yeah. It wasn't like, that's not believable. Like, he's wearing overalls. He speaks fluent sunshine. Yeah, wearing my overalls. I've got tears everywhere, mud everywhere.
And he's like, who Okay, just lay this out because it's just like, it's crazy town, but it's so beautiful. He just shows up. Is he sitting?
He's just standing there.
He's standing
just
there.
standing there, hands in his pockets.
Hands in his pockets.
Like, hey. Yeah, you could almost picture straw, but no straw. Hey. I'm like, I don't even know why you would come here. If you are God, you have heard every word I've said all morning. And this has been a couple of hours, maybe 3. You've heard every word. And they're not kind. And I don't like you. So why are you here? And he said, bring it. I can take it like a man. Say it. And so I just continued my memory came alive and I'm just popping them off. I went after another, and I could care less that you're the God of the universe, because you're not the God of my universe.
Yeah.
You're so busy with stars that you overlooked me. And then he stayed. I finished. I said, okay, I'm done. And he stayed. I said, is this where you tell me how much you don't like me? He's like, you've yet to do something that's going to change my mind about you. You've yet to do something. So I'm back on the ground, crying like a baby. And that's when we talked.
Mm.
It's like, I said, I read this morning how it works. He goes, yeah, you've always kind of liked my son. And now you know what he did. What do you think? And so it's like, man, I think this got potential. And that was all. That was enough.
That was enough for you.
That was enough. It was enough for him.
I remember you told me something so profound. You said when he was talking to you, he never took his hands out of his pockets.
Yeah. Never got defensive.
I just, it's how it's so kind when God meets us the way we need to be met, when you had a father that, when he took his hands out of his pockets.
Exactly. Yeah, Katie barred the door. You immediately just you set yourself because you were going down. So you just set yourself.
So in that moment, of just personal, private revelation of almost just kindness. I mean, feels so kind, what you're saying.
Yeah.
Kindness that you probably never even...
Foreign kindness.
Foreign kindness.
Yeah.
How do you pick up and walk away from that spot? Do you walk away and now you recognize that he's there?
Yeah.
Because you drove with him all the way home.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When he put disappointment on the bench, now what do you do? How do you reconcile that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest.
And when does he call himself real dad?
In that day, I was like, so you're really a dad? And he goes, I am the Lord real dad.
I'm the Lord real dad.
I'm the Lord real dad. Which was really if you're going to respect a dad, pick me. But mostly, I'm your dad. I'm a real dad.
I'm a real dad.
I'm a real dad. You just didn't know what a real dad was. No. So you aligned me with something that wasn't real, but I'm the real. And so it was just an easy way for me to handle that. Again, what did I need to know? Mm-hmm. Just for me, not it's not like you would write a book about the Lord real dad and people get it, but I needed to know you are still a God of the universe and not a lesser role. Same plane, all the same plane, Lord, real dad.
Yeah.
So by then the day's over. My 10 hours are up. I mean, it was like time warp. I had this butterfly that kept showing up. This is January. And I had this orange butterfly that showed up 3 times. And I'm just journaling like mad. I'm just I don't want to miss a minute of this. I'm just journaling like mad after, because he left, Yeah. You're okay. I'm okay. So I just wrote and wrote and wrote. Well, this manual has all these things you're supposed to do. So I get back and all the church leaders are there and you're still having your starvation day. So they give you a cup of broth and you sit in like a kumbaya circle and tell your story about your day, you know. And everybody's telling about, you know, and when it said to go do this, and I'm going, oh. And when we had this exercise, oh, we did that. You know, I'm just going, yeah, I missed the whole thing, you know, because I never opened the manual past
that.
Wow. Past salvation, right?
Oof.
So
Wow.
finally the facilitator looks at me and she goes, you know, how'd your day go? And I said, pretty great. She goes, you want to tell about it? No. So the next afternoon, probably another 24 hours, she said they had everybody kind of come in, just one person, a couple of ministers, you know, just what do you want to talk through? Where are you at? What are you doing? And she said, how did your day go yesterday? And they ask you then, you know, what is your salvation story? And when did you?
Oh gosh.
And I said, well, yesterday.
Oof.
You know what they did? These two women saying, Jesus loves me.
Oh, wow.
That was it. Because what are you going to say?
Right.
There's nothing at that point but song.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all you can do is try to emulate the voice of heaven. We're just going to sing.
Yeah.
Now, we were all three really terrible singers, and I didn't know the words, but I was familiar with that was a song.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Came home, 5 days, came home. Tank was immediately like,
what happened?
And then for 14 months, he was like, and so team started making a pray. Finally, Tank was like, I think I'll go to, you know, Jesus jail for a week.
So he goes too.
He went. And,
That's so good.
Tank's an engineer, so you have to do all the research,
oh, that's
right?
so good.
And so he came back and had the same face when he got back that I had. And
yeah.
I was like, and he was like, so it was like, okay. And from that moment forward, I mean, it was great for me, but for us to be doing that together and to both be toddlers for Jesus at the same time.
Toddlers for Jesus. Oh my gosh. But that's what it is.
That's what we are. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
man.
may or may not have graduated to juvies for Jesus, but mostly, because there's still 1,000 things I don't get.
Right.
All of it is just fascinating beyond measure to me.
Hey, everybody, I want to take a minute to talk to those of you and encourage those of you who maybe you're planting a church, you're on staff at a church, you're in the children's department of a church, and you run and oversee the curriculum at your kids' division of church. There is some friends of mine that have developed this curriculum that I just think it's the best curriculum for kids' church out there. It's called Amazing Kids. It is a Bible-based, spirit-filled curriculum. I know these guys. They are incredible creatives. Connie and Tyler Bates are the genius behind this, and they just love serving kids and serving God in serving our kids. If this is something that your church is looking for, if it's something that you as a pastor of your children's department is looking for, an enriched Bible-based curriculum to bring to your children's department of your church or your church plant, this is something that I would highly recommend that you do. I fully believe and back what these guys do. My own kid was under it for years, and it's just the way that they're doing it right now is just beautiful. So you can find all that information if you go to amazing.kids, and there's a kind of a special discount code that you can get, or a promotional code that you can get if you type in Rita in the promotional area of that, and they'll give you special pricing on that. But it's something that I just highly recommend. And kids are so important. They're so important in our churches. What we do when we drop our kids off in church and what's happening in the Sunday school area is so important for your children. And this curriculum is one of the best, and you will love it for your church. So check that out. It's incredible, and I back it 100%. But I think it's what I appreciate about you so much is because when you come to the table with something new, you are like you've not lost your wonder with all of the, I think it's what's so like such a gift about you in all of the abuse, in all of the ways that you lost your wonder. You've actually really never lost your wonder,
Right.
because you go at things as if it's this fascinating new, like, oh, I can't believe, like whatever God says is like this. And then when I'm talking to you about something, I'm like, oh my gosh, it almost creates wonder for other people because of the way that you look so blatantly unbiased. It's so many things. And just like, yeah, it's just like it's like a color you never saw, or a color you're trying to explain, and I think it's what's so artistic about you. I mean, you're such a creative person anyway, but you make relationship or the journey with Christ almost like this adventure. It is an adventure.
It is an adventure.
And you know what, Lisa, the sad part about it's almost comical to me how, I say it a lot to sometimes the people that I mentor. It's like, isn't it so funny that you're like, oh, I met the God of the universe, the God of everything 25 years ago. It's like, so why are you hanging on to that? Why haven't you given that to the Lord? Oh, well, and there's a million excuses why the God of the universe that we love can't like help us with this or help us with that.
Right.
And it is when you come into the context of, no, I just ask the Lord what he thinks and he'll tell me what he thinks. But there are people that have been walking with God for decades that have never stopped to have him assist them in anything or answer a question about anything because they just have never thought that he cared. And they've been walking with him for decades. And so I'm always finding that so curious that it's like, here we have the God of the universe on our side, but we act like we're still fighting hell with nobody fighting us.
All by myself.
Exactly. And it is just, sometimes that's why I want to take the church by the collar and be like, you've got the Lion of Judah on your side. What are you doing? But it's a personal prison.
It is a personal prison. And comfortable is part of that, isn't it?
Yeah,
there's
very
a language
much so.
in churches that I've been like, I do not know what you have said there because I don't know how those words apply to that environment.
Yes.
And so I do have to do a little bit of get a dictionary out or.
Yeah.
And then I also find that we use words kind of like we adapt them. They're written down, particularly on the left-hand side of the Bible, words are written down and we make the assumption that we know what it means. And a lot of them, if I Hebrew lexicon them, that's not what that said.
Yeah.
And so I'm fascinated by that. I am fascinated. But my prayer that I make every single morning is show me something today I've never seen before. My feet don't hit the ground with show me something today.
Yeah.
I've never seen before. He's never seen before, and he's never not done that. Every day I'm like, there it is. I got it.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's like 10,000 of them, But there's this business of being comfortable that I think is from the Friends of Hell.
I love that you say there's a business. There's this business of being comfortable. It's a business.
It is a business. And because if I can get comfortable, then I'm likely to stay there. Yeah. But when Jesus was leaving town and he's telling the dirty dozen, I'm about to leave town. Yeah. And what's going to happen here is, Rome's still going to be in power and you're not going to be a cabinet member and I'm not going to be, Mr. Prime Minister and, it's going to get rough, but I'm going to send somebody. The baptizer made a way for me, and I'm making a way for the Holy Spirit. Yeah. And the first order of business that he tried to teach them about the Holy Spirit was he will bring comfort. Mm-hmm. So because of that particular thing, I've often wondered if the Holy Spirit isn't just almost a girl, just that nurture.
Yeah.
I kind of
feels that way.
I kind of want it to be a mom, just for want of a mom.
Yeah.
So I've probably over applied that, to suit myself. But first order of business was comfort. But in order for you to comfort me, you're my friend. And if I came over and I said, no, I'm doing great. And you're sensing, waving the fiction flag, she's not doing great.
Yeah.
Until I tell you what I'm not doing great about, you can't take care of me.
So good.
Until I go bare naked lady, your hands are tied. Same is true of heaven. Until I go bare naked lady and say, I'm exhausted from my comfortables.
Yeah.
But the friends of hell want me to stay uncomfortable. So I don't go bare naked lady. So I don't step into the comfort of heaven.
Yeah.
Because the next order of business was once the boys were broken-hearted, they were scared to death. Their Christ was dead. What happens from here? They weren't even talking to each other. They were trying to be scarce, trying to be invisible. And so for them to one by one go, okay, he said,
yeah,
there's a holding spirit coming. There's a comforter.
There's a comforter coming.
And so I got to make right my crimes. I got to say out loud my crimes, because they were already to the point that crimes made them heartsick. Their sins made them heartsick. And so as they began to do that, then what happens? Then the holding spirit shows up like on the scene.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Just handing out courage and loaning faith and watch this, hold my beer. Let's do all of this stuff, all of this stuff. And the guys were like, okay, but if they hadn't,
Yeah.
if everybody had stayed comfortable, then where would the whole message
be?
have been?
Yeah.
Right? They were the bringers of the good news.
Yeah.
So if I am willing to be really uncomfortable, there's parts of my story that are on me. Nothing to do with the abuse that came. They're picks that I made, very bad choices. Mm-hmm. But if I'm in the company of somebody, I can see that's what they're going through. And I can say, here's what I did, and here's how it made me feel. And I was sick about it for years.
Yeah.
And when I stood before the Lord real dad and said, I'm just so sorry.
Yeah.
Then the swoop down on me, the arms wrapped around me, the raising of my chin, feeling my face in his hands. It turned my tragedy into literally a testify, right?
Yeah.
And so most of the stuff that I feel like embarrassed to say out loud, I just did it myself.
Yeah.
And I got quite the list.
Yeah, yeah.
But as I've gone through the list, and he's just so cute, right? He's just so cute because he'll be like, oh, that's annoying you. I'm going to force somebody into your life where you got to say that out loud, because power of life and death is in the tongue. It means when I say it out loud, I've given life. I've brought light into the room.
He's good doing that.
Right. He's going to 86 the dead guy, right? Dead guy goes. You've given life to it because you spoke it out.
Yeah.
Right? So even if you say something to somebody, you see something on them and you say something that's true, you've brought life, because they'll walk away with that. A new life has been born. I'm a landscaper, right?
Yeah.
So you put the seed in the ground, right? But somebody's still got to pull the weeds.
Right.
And you can't overwater it. Some people want to stay, like somebody gives them a prophetic word. So they want to stay near the person that handed them off a word. No, that's overwatering the seed. Their job was to make me go closer to the king chair. That's all. This is all I got. Take what I gave you and go over to the king chair and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Pick your triplet. Is this a conversation for the guy that walked the earth? Is this a conversation for the guy that invented it all? Is this a conversation for the comforter in pain?
Yeah.
But go back to the king chair.
I love that.
And have more conversation with them. Stay in the proximity. But if we get addicted to the person that's handing out all these encouraging words, we've just overwatered seed. Seed will never germinate.
Yeah. That's so good.
It just stays there.
Yeah, it's so good.
So
how do, though, I think that you, I think that the such a beautiful gift that you have in your storyline is there's such a trek of how the Lord Real Dad pushed you into forgiveness.
Mm.
Can you just take us through the story of having to let your dad go?
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah. Because you're in relationship with this whole new thing now. You know God, you leave Jesus camp, and then your dad gets sick.
Well, my dad had always kind of like been off and on sick all of our lives.
Yeah.
We had been told a lot of times that this was it, he was going to get dead. And then he never fulfilled the promise.
Which was a bummer back then.
Sorry.
Sure.
So as soon as I got out of Camp Jesus, Lord Real Dad said, go see your father. And I'm like, no, that's not going to happen. And he just kind of stayed after me. And so I bargained, which I do. And I said, I will go over there if my mother's there, and only. So the first time I rang, I said, is Granny Ma, that's what we called my mother's, Granny Ma home? Raymond answered, is Granny Ma home? He said, no. And I said, okay. Well, I was going to come see y'all, but I want to come by when you're both there. And I kept it pretty, light. And he goes, oh, she'll be home. And, can you come tomorrow? And so I can come after work. Will she be home in the evening, or does she have, Bible study or something? No, she'll be home tomorrow night. So I go over and I'm driving up and I'm making mad pray. Why are you sending me? And I'm getting nothing except.
And you haven't seen them in
a long time, decades. And so I'm like, okay, he says, just do what I've asked you to do. Go. So I go in.
Because he didn't tell you, go and do this. He
just
said, go see.
Right. And so I'm like, how I operate, and I don't operate well without a plan, And
Yeah.
So I just go. I tap the door. Raymond meets me at the door. Of course, he comes shorts and no shirt, so I can see how skinny and frail he is. I saw all the manipulation going on. And then, I stayed a while, maybe 2 hours, and they're going through the house and telling me, we want to make sure you get this and you get this, but trying to buy now. Okay. I always had some money around, and they were always trying to use that as an affection tool. And so I'm just looking at all this stuff going, I'm probably going to throw up. Oh. In my mind, I'm just like, please don't throw up. Please don't throw up. So the evening finishes. I achieved nothing. He was no kinder to Granny Ma while I was there. He didn't ask me anything about myself. He didn't ask me about any of Tank and I have 6 kids collectively. He didn't ask about any kids. He didn't ask after Tank. And so I'm like, talked about himself as usual. I leave. I'm like, okay, check.
Done. Did it.
3 weeks later, go see Raymond.
Oof. Oh my gosh.
Like, hello, what? And I did. I'm like repeating, I did. I went. No, go again. We got through this for 20 months. Each time I'm like, why am I going? Just go. Just go. Just go. In fact, one time it went about 6 weeks, and I'm on my Harley and I'm riding down the highway and I'm like, oh, it's been a while. I must be done. I don't know why I was going, but I must be done.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, hey, Lord Real Dad, am I done with Raymond? And an 18-wheeler drives past me. And on the side of it says, Raymond Excavation.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, so tonight? He goes, tonight. So I go again. I mean, that's how it went.
And the whole time you're doing this, when you're seeing them, it's the same thing. It's just like,
it's the same thing.
He's talking about himself. He's never changed.
He's never changed. And so I'm like, he doesn't ask after the brothers. Am I supposed to tell him what real salvation is?
You're not even going into the role, hey, I found.
It's not even, hey, I brought Chick-fil-A. It's just show up.
Okay. All right.
And so, because to break bread with them would be weird. So one day I'm on a job and I call over there to talk to Raymond, which I've never done. Never talked to him on the phone. And a woman answers the phone and says, well, he is dying and his wife is in there with him. And I said, well, this is their daughter. And I felt the coldness because they've told all the stories, to all of their friends.
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, tell them that their daughter called and I'll come over. And I got over there, and he's on their bed, and he's covered to his chin, and she's on the bed next to him reading the Bible.
Your mom?
My mother is on the bed next to him. And so I walk in, and I saw her kind of like, okay, she wasn't sure what I was doing there. But I walked past her, and I went over to his side of the bed, and I pushed his hair back, and I kissed his forehead.
Oh, Lisa.
And then I stood with my hand on his head, and you saw her just kind of relax her shoulders, and she said, read to him from this. And I didn't ask, is he really dying? I just said, okay. But his eyes were like frozen open. Couldn't blink. Couldn't close his mouth.
Had he had a stroke or?
I don't know. I don't know what had transpired since the last time I'd seen him, because it had only been a couple of weeks. And so she left. I took her Bible. I'm reading out Psalms, and then I realized you're here for a stay. So I texted Tank, and I told him where I was, and I said, "Can you bring me a toothbrush? I'm staying." And so Tank actually came over that night and slept in the armchair in that room. And
that's just, you haven't stayed in your house.
No.
Since you.
In 40 years at that point. Right. And so I laid down on the bed beside him, and I kept him covered, because by then he was probably 90 pounds, 80 pounds. And I kept him covered, but I kept my hand on top of his hand. And if I took my hand away for any reason, he'd get fidgety. But a hospice nurse was there, and she said, I've been doing hospice care for 13 years. I've never encountered this, but there's something very evil about this room, and I genuinely can't stay in here. Wow. She says, so I'll be in the other room, and if you need anything, just come get me. And so it'd be time to change his diaper, and I'd go get her, and we'd change his diaper. But Tank brought me my boom, my UE boom thing, and Bluetooth some music to it. And so I'd play my worship music. And then I told him about the brothers, who they'd become in spite of him and because of him, and what part of it was the good of him, and just caught him up on his sons. And this went on for 3 days. And on that probably last day and a half, he died, and I went and got her, and she came in.
The hospice girl.
The hospice nurse, she came in and said, no pulse, no blood pressure. She's getting the paperwork out. And she's saying, he's gone, and she's starting to write it up. And he that first time he came charging back into that body, terrified. Now he can't blink, but the face on him was terror. And I'm like, whoa. And so she's like, okay, I'm going to the other room. And I blame her. I didn't blame her at all. I was like, yeah, I get it. And so this happens another time, maybe 8-9 hours later. And then it happens a third time. So finally I said, Lord, real Dad, tell me what's going on here. And he took me to that passage
where he's dying.
He's dead. And she's coming in each time and ready to start the paperwork. He's not in there. Yeah. And I said, what is happening? And he said, read this passage. I go to Luke, where you have Lazarus and the rich man. Not the get dead Lazarus, but the poor Lazarus. And so, the rich man has gone to hell, but he can still see Lazarus up with Abraham. And I always picture Abraham, rich man who didn't get a name, ironically, he's going, let Lazarus touch water and touch my tongue. And I can see Abe just going, leave my boy alone. Yeah. And so I find it fascinating at this point that The rich man just, instead of saying, send me a 5-gallon bucket of water, he's saying, let him touch water and touch my tongue. Apparently that's how he lived his whole life. And that's all he knew.
Yeah.
And I said to the Lord Real Dad, I said, Raymond's seeing hell. He says, Raymond's seeing hell. I said, is Raymond going to hell? Now at this point, it was a very personal conversation with me and Lord Real Dad.
Yeah.
And he's present. And I said, he's going to hell. Why are you still here? He said, because I love him. And when he goes, I won't see him anymore. So I said, man, I want to maybe kind of, sort of, in a way, a little bit, try to forgive him.
Yeah.
And he said, that's enough. He said, I will loan you my love for him. And in that minute, it was so instantaneous that I was just like, and it changed everything for me. It changed everything for me. It changed the smell of the room. It changed the ease of laying there beside him and talking to him. It just changed everything. I looked and at the door jamb, physically standing there was a girl about this big. She was wearing red.
You're seeing this in the room.
I'm seeing this in the room.
Yeah.
It's the middle of the night.
Has he passed yet, or is he still?
He's still alive. And she's standing at the door jamb. Her face is mostly covered, but she's watched this whole conversation between me and Lord Real Dad. And then she goes away. But before she went away, I said to Tank, there's a ghost at the door. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
And he's like, he stands up and he goes over. I haven't described anything.
Yeah, to Tank.
To Tank. And he goes over and he goes, like, here? And he puts his hand on top of her head.
Whoa.
I said, you can see her. He goes, no.
Whoa.
I just think this is where whatever you're saying is. You know, he's an engineer. He's not going to say the word ghost. And I just didn't. I had no semantic value for what I was for what I was saying. As I've thought about that over time, and then when we moved Grandma out of that house eventually, and we built a house for her at my house, and she gave me a red cape. It was mine when I was 3.
Oh goodness!
And I was like,
"That's the cape on."
It was me. It was like something about me was standing at the door waiting for this moment since I was 3 years old.
Oh. Wow.
I found it fascinating the longer I've gone on and the more words I've read in the big book. That the big commandment is to love the Lord Real Dad with all my heart.
Yeah.
All my might.
Yeah.
Everything that he invented me to be. To figure out how to love myself the way he loves me.
Yeah.
And then to love you with all of that might.
Yeah.
I wanted to. My request was so small, but I thought it was huge. I wanted to be able to forgive him.
Yeah.
And in the nature of the being, just the way that triplets operate, I said, no. You just want forgive, but we're going to give you love.
Yeah.
Which took care of all of it.
Which took care of all of it.
Wow. My request seems so small now when I'm like, oh, I just want this. I realize, okay, he's going to give me something so much bigger. It's 100%.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed. Because I only know what I know so far.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but I know the next, so I'm giving you more.
Wow.
And that was my first real, live, tangible experience of mustard seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gave him a seed, and he gave me back an oak. You know, he just
Yeah,
gave me back
yeah,
something
yeah.
giant. You know,
Yeah.
just the great exchange is so much different than I understand in my capitalism. You know?
Yeah.
And so it just changed. It didn't just change about me and Draymond. It changed just the ripple effect across the sound.
Yeah.
It just changed everything. Everything I came in contact with after that was like, okay, you're driving me crazy, but for whatever reason, Lord Real Dad loves you.
Yeah.
What is wrong with him?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's just kind of like been the most giant.
Yeah.
You know how you can have like an encounter.
Yeah.
You know, you can have an experience, but then you have something that absolutely transforms every cell.
I think of the semi-truck, like the Raymond excavation.
Raymond excavation. Yeah.
How profound.
Yeah.
What do you think is, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions here. What do you think, I mean, it's not the same for everybody, their encounters, but forgiveness is such a big deal for people to move on. What would you, and how would you encourage people that come from significant trauma and have pasts with people and parents or family or incidences, circumstances where it's almost taken their language and taken their ability? How would you encourage people's own excavation?
Start with what you know. Start with what you know. This all I knew at that point about the language of being a believer people was forgive. And so that's what I ask for. It's a little bit like the chica that everybody's dropping in bags of gold and she puts in 2 pennies.
Yeah.
And Jesus
Lady
goes,
in the back, yeah.
And Jesus goes, that one. She gave out of her poverty.
Yeah.
My poverty was, I only knew the word forgive. And he just went, thank you, and gave me back all of it.
And the prophetic, that like you can call it prophetic, almost magical part about it is, which is why the very nature of God just is stunning to me, that you're visiting that man just about every 2 weeks for months before that.
Right.
It's almost like the prep time.
Exactly.
You couldn't have just gone there and that happened and that would have ever taken place.
Would not.
It was this beautiful lead in, like this beautiful, this is how we're going to start this. You don't know this, but this is how we're going to start this. And you had almost become used to being like, do I need to go see him? Do I need to go do this? Do I need to go do this? To where you were ready.
But it was a whole change of role, wasn't it? My role in that family had always been, you're going to take care of everybody, right? You're going to take it. So my thought was, I'm going to go in and there's something he's going to ask and he's going to hear the answer and he's going to run to Jesus and we took care of it. But the whole 20 months was about Lord Real Dad taking care of me the way a father would.
That's just.
I was being taken care of.
Stunning.
Do I have a job? No. Just go. Just go. Do
I need to say something? Nope.
Just go. Just go and keep going. Just go and keep going. Just go and keep going. As hard as it was, 20 months didn't sound like a whole lot, but it was very, Tank would be like, why do you keep going? Because Jesus said. Because I would just come home just going, man, it was this and it was this and it was hard and and he was the one at the house having to pick up all the pieces. He was having to listen to me just absolutely tear it all apart and replay it back. Yeah. Right. And so, but that business about forgive, there's this enormous pressure to forgive. And then we just like bounce back into our church lady lives and I forgave my father and you can too. And, but we don't turn it into, what's the thing that's going to, every single time, the way the good news was spread was, I need to tell you what he did. I need to tell you what he did for me. Yeah. I need to tell you what I've seen. I need to tell you what I've witnessed. I need to tell you how I've been transformed. Yeah. Take Mad Mary. She's the best, right? Her story just went on and on and on. She kept going, but she never said, I wasn't. She said, I was, and now. And so he just this incredible permission to go, this is actually what happened. Yeah. The permission is not given to pretend it didn't happen. The permission is not given to forgive and forget. And the permission is not, I guess the permission is there, but there's no requirement to forgive somebody and then like be friends with them. Right. I don't have to go for a margarita with you just because we've sorted this. Yeah. Because it doesn't mean you're not still dangerous. Raymond remained dangerous to the end.
Even the hospice nurse couldn't be in there.
Right. Yeah. How kind even that for him to send me someone astute enough to go, hey, this is real. Yeah. And I don't make enough money for this.
Yeah. I'm not going to stand in this room.
I don't want this on my skin. Yeah. And so just that a whole, that business is, I don't know. Aren't you just fascinated by it? Yeah. It's truly just blow your swords off. But when somebody's wanting to forgive somebody, and the scripture is very clear. People say, well, I had to forgive myself. That's not what it says in Psalms. It says, he got dead on the cross for my crimes and the way they made me feel. So he took all of it. Oh. He didn't just take my sin thing. He took how that left me feeling. Yeah. And that got the nail as well. So when I'm still trying to hold on to the guilt, when I'm still trying to be embarrassed by it, when I'm not taking it and turning it into fortitude like a testify. Yeah. He's like, hey, you just stole my trophy. Yeah. That was mine.
Oh, that's so mine. Good.
But when somebody says, what I really want is forgive, I always say, then just start there. But I tell them what I said. I sort of kind of, in a way, a little bit maybe want to consider the possibility of a portion of forgive.
That was enough.
Enough. That was enough. And Lord Real was like, dude, there's a crack in the door. Yeah. And all the angels came running, right? Because he's not going to force me, right?
No.
He's not going to force me.
He just doesn't do that.
He's such a gentleman. Rode in the back seat of the Jeep until he knew that I was ready to get rid of disappointment. But she was comfort to me. She made me comfortable. And so what did he do? He did it for me. And it was so much tenderness towards this thing that was so precious to me. Disappointment was my lifeline. Yeah. I have a reason for being the way I am. Mm-hmm. It's been hard. Yeah. And you judge me, you don't know my story. Right. Well, now I'm like, judge me. Let me tell you my story. Yeah. So it changed everything.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. This is Rita Springer. Thank you so much for coming in and joining me on the podcast here with Worship is My Weapon. There's a lot of things I'm doing right now. And one of the things that we provide alongside this podcast is a newsletter that we send out to those of you that are subscribed, where I just answer questions and kind of give you information. And sometimes you guys are able to write in with questions that you just are curious about. We love that. We love that interaction. I actually love to interact with those of you that want something a little bit more beyond the podcast. So if that's you, make sure to get our newsletter, sign up for our newsletter, subscribe to the newsletter, and stay in touch with all the things that we're doing here on the podcast in that newsletter. My last question for you is, part of the sweet decoding of this insane book you have to get. When I Last Saw Me, and you say the Memoir of Sammi Bass. Why is it the Memoir of Sammi Bass?
When I told the brothers I was writing down this book,
Yeah.
they were very hesitant.
Well, it's a big story to tell.
Right. And so they asked me to consider changing their names. So if I was going to change their name, I had to change mine. And some of the towns aren't accurately named for the exact same reason. So when I was born, Raymond wanted to name me Sam. My maiden name is Bost, B-O-S-T. And my mother was a big criminal named Sam Bass. And so my mother was like, she's going to sound like a Bonnie and Clyde. We're not going to name her Sam Bost. And so when I was like, okay, what name? Sam Bass. And so then I had to make it girl, so I made it Sammi Bass.
Sammi Bass, the Memoir of Sammi Bass.
Yeah, it's my own little joke for myself.
You have this beautiful little trait about you that it's one of my favorite things, is that I didn't know it when I met you. I think Cassie may have, our mutual friend may have said, be careful, because if she feels a connection with you, she'll ask real dad what he calls you. And I was like, what? You know, and she's like, well, she'll ask real dad what he calls you, and she'll only then call you by the name that real dad calls you with, which is crazy when you think about it. But some of us, when we meet you, when we all talk about it later, it's like, am I going to get a name? Am I going to get a name? Am I going to get a name? It's like, you know, you're in with Lisa when you get a name, because people call you Sunshine.
Right.
And so I remember when we met, and then I got a name, and Justice got a name. And I was like, we're in. But there's a lot of, like, you I don't think you call your dad Raymond in here. I think you call him Skillet.
Skillet.
And there's all these kind of beautiful different, it's why there's almost like you kind of need a decoder, but you have to read it like it's this poetic memoir of tragedy, abuse, and the finding of your own heart. And that's why I think everybody should read this. Don't wait till the movie comes out. Read it. But that's one beautiful trait about you, about the names. When do you feel like that started with you?
Well, again, you asked me early on, do you think that heaven was around you all the time, even though you were telling them to go away? I have given nicknames since I started talking.
Wow.
I just have.
Yeah.
People will say their name, and I'm like, nope, you don't even look like that name. Here's your name.
That's great.
It wasn't until I started having conversations with the Lord Real Dad that
Yeah.
he was like, go look up that name. Does that tell me what that name means that you gave that guy 40 years ago? Oh, I said, that's actually what I call him.
Got it.
And this is why, because this is what's on his life.
That's just beautiful.
So it's just like one of those things that I think, so we're invented in heaven first, right?
Yeah.
We're invented there. We're created there.
Yeah.
I mean, when people
We're
say
known there first. Yeah.
Yeah, people say, oh, you're born with a little bit of evil. Well, that doesn't make sense to me. I may be theologically unsound, but the way I picture it, because I'm a word picture girl, you got the triplets hanging out, and they're going to invent a Sammi Bass.
Yeah.
And so, well, she's going to need some of the fortitude of the Jesus, and she's going to need like the nurture of the Holy Spirit, and she's going to need the ability to see into the future, and so that'll be the God part, that'll be the dad part, but there's not like a pile of dung sitting in heaven where they just reach over and go, let's just sprinkle in some dung. It's 100% good.
It's 100% good.
It's 100% good. And then at some point when the time is right, that being that's already been invented and built gets woven into a mother's womb. That's what we bring. We bring, and if you watch little kids that talk to themselves and they look like they're looking at something, I have nothing to prove this, but it strikes me they're talking to angels and they remember heaven.
Yeah.
And the more of this side of the plane
you.
that we're exposed to, the harder, since this is in my face all the time, the harder it becomes to remember heaven. I think that's intentional.
Yeah.
to remember heaven is very comforting when you first get here. It's got to be jarring. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't remember. First memory I have, I was 3.5 and being sexually abused. That's my youngest memory. But
Yeah.
the little kids that still talk to thin air, and you're like, they're looking at something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I think there's that thing. And so we bring a lot more of heaven when it says, heaven will meet earth and heaven on earth. And if we took the time to remember or even ask, what if we sat down and said, okay, when you invented me, tell me. And if that's too far-fetched, I'll sometimes just say, okay, I pictured the Gold Street in heaven and it has an Irish pub and the triplets are sitting at a table, right? This is my picture.
My God,
or Jesus has a glass of wine. The holding spirit, because in my mind, she may or may not be a chica. I think it's that nurture margarita with salt on the rim. And of course, Lord Drill Dad has a beer so that he can look at Jesus and say, what's this? Hold my beer, right? So this is how I picture them. They're sitting at the table and I can sit at the table and go, I'm in trouble. I've forgotten me. Show me your favorite YouTube video of me. And they're so excited. Of course, Jesus says all the tech stuff because he's been here, right? He's done the earth suit. So he like whips it out and says, how many do you want to see? Yeah. And they just laugh and they just enjoy to just be enjoyed by the triplets. Yeah. And inevitably one of them will say, she got that from me. And then I'm like, okay, I remember now. Yeah. And then I'm okay.
Yeah, that's so good.
I know it's super far-fetched.
No, but I just love it. I know that everything has an origin with you, and it's actually quite an honor to have a name.
Zippo.
Zippo. My name's Zippo.
Because you bring light.
Yeah.
In the dark.
It's so great. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. This was dead fun.
Thank you for just the sacredness of your story. Mm. And the fact that so much pain has brought you so much definition and so much light. And that's crazy to think about.
It is, isn't it?
It's crazy to think about.
Pain can literally be transformed into pure. It's just amazing.
Man, it's insane.
Yeah.
But thank you for that. I think many people that watch this that identify with your story, this is going to encourage them. So thank you so much, Lisa. You're the best.
Cheers. Cheers and amen.